What's going on, guys? This is Corey Owens from We Found Nostalgia, Grow Memphis Agency, Memphis Entrepreneur Club. Today I am showcasing my Memphis metas, digital twin, downtown Memphis, in the Metaverse. We're using Unreal Engine. I'm going to kit bash. Oh, I love how those shadows are actually a little bit more accurate than what I remember. We're going to kit bash some Google Earth model data that I've imported into the engine so that I can show you how I take that information into a program like Sketchup to build the more physically accurate model, then to import back into the engine. And this is a one-to-one scale, um, upscaled, imported model. I've got a lot of the model kind of broken up where I no longer need the reference, but I'm using this Google Earth data as a reference in the engine so that I can kind of get the positioning of the buildings and block out. Typically, I would do like a gray blocking process that is normally done in game design to just build out like a base gray block level. But I like to go ahead and actually build my buildings. I'll show you an example. Memphis Pyramid is supposed to be right here, so if I go over, I'm using multiple screens so that I can have more canvas um, to view my model. But if I turn on the Bass Pro building, all right, it's a portion of the building that I've imported in here, whereas the base of this is still Google Earth model data. As you can see, the level of detail is extremely low and it's just got a texture on it. But I did design, you can see like, these are some serious details here. That's not a texture, those are actually details in the design because that's the fidelity that I'm going for the entire city. All right, so this is the Bass Pro Shops in Memphis with the Ducks Unlimited logo. Okay, and this is the observation deck. It's a work in progress. There are no interior models. I just did kind of a base design, and I used a bunch of different um, elements so that I can individually texture and art direct all these different elements of the building. All right, and I want a high fidelity look and feel. So I've already deleted the reference triangles from the underlying Google Earth data and just replaced that with the Bass Pro Shops file the Bass Pro Shops model that I designed using SketchUp. And we're going to go and do the same thing. So I'm going to go and shut this off. We're going to do the exact same thing for another building. Let's see, buildings, Bass Pro. Let's turn that off. And I believe we're going to use the Raymond James building. So the first thing I do is I go from lit to unlit mode so that I can see the textures, no shadows. Regardless of which direction I'm viewing, I can get a good look at my asset. And what I like to do first is just go into the uh, add to project drop down, and I'll grab a basic shape and a cube and I'll click and drag this out, and I'll align it to this building. So if I go to, let's see, make sure we're not in game mode. There we go. So I'm going to extend this out. I want to extend it out an awful lot more than this. We're going to turn off this snapping helper. Let's see. Let's do a rotation. And I'm going to move this into the building just a little bit. All right, and then we're going to try to get as accurate of an alignment as possible. And I think it's pretty safe to say that this is pretty good. Now, one thing I'm going to do to check this, because this might be like my base block or rectangle that I will use to determine the layout of the rest of the buildings on this street. or I'm going to expand it up like so, and then expand it out a few blocks down. Okay, and then I'm going to move this down to the ground. And what I'm looking for is I want the end of this block to be as aligned with, you know, one of these buildings. Well, the end of this, let's call this a cube, right? This modified cube. I want the edge of this modified cube to be aligned with the edge of the last building on this street. All right, and then I will do a rotation to make sure that it also aligns with the edge of one of these buildings that is kind of, you know, in the same um, the facade or face of the building to make it perpendicular, I think is the word I'm looking for. All right, all of the buildings obviously will not align, but if I stretch this out far enough, I get a good idea of how misaligned my rotation is, if that makes sense. So I can bring this down here. Let's actually bring it all the way down to about there. And then we're just going to go building by building to just kind of gauge the alignment. And honestly, it looks to me like everything is aligned. Just some of these buildings pop out into the block or closer to the street than others, right? So that gives me a pretty good gauge to know that I've got my rectangle in the right place. All right, so I'm gonna just copy this. I'm gonna do Control C, and I'll go into my outliner, which is off screen. It says Cube 17. I'm gonna right click that Cube 17 and go over to visibility and hide selected at startup. Let me just go ahead and show you what I've got in my other screen. So I've got my details panel, my word partition, and output log in one, like docked in one area of this window. And then I've got my outliner docked in a separate block, and then I've got my preferences and project settings. Typically I'll have my content browser over here as well. So let me go to window, actually let's see, is it under window, content browser 1? I'll dock this in the beginning of my third block. So content browser, editor preferences, project settings, right? So in outliner, I'm going to grab this cube I just created, and I'll just keep the name as is, but I'll right click, visibility, hide selected at startup, and then I'll go into my details panel and search hidden, HIDDEN, and then we're going to check actor hidden in game. Okay, and I'll bring this back to the other side. So when I tap G and go into game mode, or if I press simulate or play, that block will hide itself. Okay, so I'm going to go and we're going to copy. Let's actually just right click the cube, edit, and duplicate. So Control D is to duplicate. So that's what I'll do is I'll duplicate, Control D, and we'll turn off one of those cubes. All right, and this one I'm good to now go ahead and modify. All right, so one of the tools that I like to use is called Snapping Helper. I believe is what that's called. Let me bring this out to about the base of this building, or at least to the facade. So about here. And then we're going to bring this back down to size. So right now I'm just scaling. Okay, and then I installed a plugin called Snapping Helper 3D. When I turn on Snapping Helper 3D, I get these little dots on all of my corners and midpoints of the models and on surrounding assets. And another thing that I can do to help determine, so I'll click on the corner of this rectangle, and now I can stretch the block this way. So another thing I can do to help determine whether my rotation is accurate, let me just move this out a little bit, is I can stretch this cube out to the size of this building, and depending on like how much of that cube pops out at one time, that should give me an idea of how aligned my cube is to the rotation of this building. And I think this looks good, right? So for example, if I rotate it, if I push this out and I notice that, you know, the part of the white is popping out and then it's gradually popping out as I go along the building, that would mean my rotation is off, assuming that the building is actually built as like a square or rectangle building, right? Um, but since everything seems to kind of pop out at the same time, I think it's safe to assume that we have a decent rotation here. It doesn't have to be pixel perfect because we're going to bring this cube inside of SketchUp. I'm just going to rotate it just a little bit and let's see how that changes things. Yeah, that's a little better, I think. All right, so let me grab this point and let me make sure that this thing is on the ground. All right, that just about touches the ground right there. Let me see if I can put this down at the bottom point, and then we're going to pull this cube up. Okay, so one thing that I can do instead of just pulling the cube all the way up is, I can go to Google and find some image references, which is what I'll do now. All right, so we've got, this image, and usually what I'll just do is I'll download a bunch of different images into um, a folder, bunch of picture images, and I'll find some close-ups and I'll get as many pictures as possible of different angles and different portions of these photos, this building. And I'll try to get some pictures that are as big as I can possibly find. But starting at the bottom, let's see, and then I'll also go to maps.google.com. So let me find all these buildings, and we're going to create a folder for this building asset. All right, so what I'll do is I'll go to my File Explorer. We're going to go into our project, this PC, projects, Corey, 3D projects, Memphis, and I've got a SketchUp folder here. I'm going to add a new folder in the SketchUp folder called Raymond James Building. And in that folder, I'll create a new folder titled Inspiration, or for this, we won't do inspiration, we'll do references. Okay, and then we'll do a new folder, SketchUp models, new folder, logo. All right, because we're going to want to design the logo. New folder, actually, I don't know if I need a new folder, but references. Okay, so let's bring this on one side. Let's grab some references. Let's look at a bunch of photos. We're also going to go into Google Maps, and we're going to look at the street view and some 3D views as well. So here's a great photo, a great example for what we'll use for the logo, so that we know how to build the logo and what the textures look like, what some of the separation. All right, so let's I should be able to just drag and drop, right? Okay, so we can go new folder, logo, inside of my references folder, new folder, let's see, rooftop, new folder, general, new folder, ground level. All right, and that way we can drag things kind of in those respective folders. Okay, so rooftop. See if we have any more here that we want to open in a new tab and use. I love these pictures that we're finding. Okay, this one would be ground level. This one would be, I want to put this one on ground level as well, but this is more of a general. Okay, general. You know, and if we can find some videos, we're gonna go and download some videos as well. I'm gonna open up these. Let's see. All right, so you know, just references, general. There's a good one. We'll use this one as our ground level reference. Looks like it's the same picture, same picture. We'll put this under general and cancel. Looks like we already got that one. I love that, general. Okay, this one, general. And we'll put this one on the rooftop. Okay, that's a good rooftop reference. Open a few more in another tab. You know, though we can't see a whole lot from some of these, we don't need much, but we definitely need something that has enough quality for us to be able to kind of determine where windows would be and what they look like. Okay, rooftop. Okay, so you know, I think what we have thus far is pretty great. We don't need a significant amount of images, but we just need enough to be able to kind of see the overall. Oh, I love this one, general. The overall. See, rooftop. Do we have this one already? I can't tell if those are the same. They are. Okay. And now let's close all of these. And let's do just one more good search. Let's right click, inspect. Let's go to we've got some embedded images here, it looks like. So let's go into this script and see if we can find this image. Body, head, blah, blah, blah. A whole bunch of stuff. And maybe this is just, oh, I'm sorry. This is actually a PDF. I thought this was a website. So I will download this PDF and put it in my Raymond James folder. Projects, Corey, projects, Memphis. Even though we put this in the Sketchup folder, I mean, but that's what it's all for anyways. So references, and we're just going to save it in the references folder. That's fine. Raymond James Tower. This gives us an inside view. This gives us some views of the rooms, and I love that. All right, because we might go so far as to do some renderings inside of the building and some other general information, which is cool. Okay, Raymond James Building, Memphis. We're under images, tools, size, large. And this is going to kind of limit us to much larger images, which we might find some that we haven't seen yet. So let's keep looking. And let's just get a few more. You can never have too many. All right. And this is our way of, you know, we're kit bashing, but I am the type of person that likes to just go ahead and bring in as much detail as possible for these buildings. You know, kit bashing is great, but what I'm trying to accomplish, and that's technically not a rooftop one, so we're going to bring that back into references and move that into general. What I like to do instead of, you know, going straight into gray blocking is, man, why does this look so fake? Raymond James James history, I'm gonna click on that, is I like to create fine details in just a selection of larger buildings so that I can use a small area of my project to pitch to venture capitalists and to showcase the fidelity of the project to get people excited. All right, and there's that. I think that's enough. We're going to go to maps.google, and then we're going to go to Raymond James, Memphis. Okay, actually, we're just going to go to downtown Memphis, Tennessee. We're going to hold down the control button and rotate. And we're going to zoom into Raymond James. Okay, let's collapse this. And, we're just going to look around and see what's what. Kind of get a good look and feel of this high level of detail asset. And something that I could potentially do, it might not be super necessary at the moment, but for future reference, when I want to take a building that's not in my current model and bring it into the engine, I can use some sort of 3D capture software and go download Google Earth, which I have somewhere, Pro, and just do a capture so that I can bring this model into Sketchup or something, and then do the modeling on top of it. But the reason I'm going about the process the way that I am is because I like to use my Unreal Engine project as a reference. All right, that being said, I've got all the pictures that I want for now. I'm going to minimize this. Okay, we're going to come back to that later. Here's my project. It looks a little bit different. But now I can go and look into my reference folder at my ground level and just get a little bit of an idea of what the detail is for this building. So I'm going to right click and open this in, let's see, let's open this in Photos and minimize this. Okay, let's bring this window down a little bit. And I wonder if I can keep this on top. Let's see. I have a program that I could use to keep this in window on top, but it's okay. For now, we're just going to kind of zoom in here and look at these images. And what I would normally do is I would go to the location and take photos of the building myself to get some ground level references, but I don't have the capacity to do that right at this moment. All right, so I'm going to get an idea of what the detail is of this building before I start blocking out in the engine. And this will kind of help me understand what direction to take with some of the design. Okay, so now that I've kind of gotten a good look at this ground level and I'm looking at some of the detail on these windows, right, I can kind of understand how this building is blocked out. Basically, all of these windows, all of these sections can be duplicated. This section is designed exactly like this section underneath it, and so on, right? So this section here can be designed one time and then duplicate it upward. We design it, then we go duplicate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or maybe 11, right? And then this one is slightly different because it comes to an end at the rooftop. Okay, boom, 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 and then we make some modifications to the ones at the top, and then boom, make a modification on that last one, right? So this should be a really easy building to bash together with once we understand what this first floor is gonna look like. All right, so easy breezy. Now, um, let's see. I guess where I will start is, hold on, let's see if I can find a good program to recommend before I continue. Um, let's see, keep window on top, Windows 11. I know I have a program, so always on top pin to top doesn't work. Just complete setup. There is a program called something tools for Windows. I always use the always on top feature. Apps, Microsoft Store, Microsoft Power Toys. So I know I have that somewhere, but let's do a search for it. Install on Windows. Open, not now. I do not want to use Microsoft Edge as my default browser. Not a fan. All right, and we're going to install Microsoft Power Toys. I recently reset Windows, which is why this isn't already on here. Man, apple juice is so good. Oh my goodness, and crazy, crazy, crazy. Close this. Close Edge. Always on top. Windows Control T. We should be able to close this now. Let's see. I think what I wanted to keep on top was the photos, so Windows Control T. And we're just going to move this down just ever so slightly to about right there. Okay, and great. This gives me a good idea of where I need to block this building out now. All right, so with this as a reference, I now know just about how high I need to go. Let's look over on this side. It's not going to be perfect, but it will be good enough. And let's say just about right here, because I know there's like a little bit of a line that needs to be at the bottom of this window. Okay, and we're going to move this out just a hair. Actually, no, I think it needs to stay where it is. And Google kind of extrudes this wall out, probably because maybe it is extruded out a little bit here. As we can see here, we have this extrusion here, and it's just one like spherical tube. And I would assume that the rest of this window or this building is kind of maybe a line. So maybe let's go to our Google data, our model, and let's see if we can go down a street view and get a better look. So we're going to drag usually there it is. We're going to drag this guy out to here. And can I dock 2 windows at a time? I think I can. I think I can. Excuse me. And we're going to put that right there. All right, so yeah, it is actually extruded a little bit. Now, if I can go back. Whoops, had an accident. wish there was like a minimal version of this with no information on it. So what I can do real quick, right click, inspect, and let's make this full screen for a second. And we're gonna grab this and go to element style and say visibility none or hidden. Okay, what's the next thing we can hide? Let's go right click, inspect. Yep, nerd stuff. Okay, same thing here. Visibility hidden. Inspect. Okay, same thing here. All right. Now, this gives us a much cleaner view and way more detail. That's perfect. Now, kind of zoom out a little bit. Let's go back this way some. Okay, so it is indeed kind of pushed out a little bit. So, that being said, I wish we had the ability to isolate items. Okay, so I'm going to pull this out just a hair, or at least till we get to the footer of the building. I'd say that's probably good enough. And let's make sure that we have the correct length. Let's see. It's possible that I need to use this side. Sometimes you got to go in the ground to get access to what I'm looking for. All right, let's pull this out to there. Okay, let's make sure that we stretch this to the outside of this wall as well. Okay, right here. And then we're going to do the same thing here. All right, looks like our rotation is just off just by a hair. There we go. And I would say that that's pretty good. Let's check the other side of this wall right here and then do a quick move to see. Yeah, it is just slightly off. Micro adjustments are tough. Alright, I think that's a little more legit. Let's get inside of that wall just a little bit. Alright, let's make sure we're popping out here at a decent place. So more about there. Alright, because remember the top of this wall kind of has something extruding out of it. So we don't necessarily need to bring this whole thing out all the way to the edge of, you know, what we see inside of our Earth data. Okay. I think it's safe to say that that's good. All right, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do now is do a hold down Alt and drag this upward. You know what? Actually, I do want to enable a 45-degree snap. So maybe docking these windows was kind of unnecessary if I just did something like this. I'm going to do a 45-degree snap. And then I will do an Alt and drag to bring this out. We're going to extend it and then move it back. Okay, and then we're going to do a 45-degree rotation. We're going to extend it upwards and move it down just a hair. And now let's bring this into about there. Alright, so first let me cut this cube off. Let's go down kind of in between this cube and the wall. And let's see if we can get a decent adjustment to where this just barely touches the edge of that inner wall right there. So I'll say right there is about safe. Alright. Alright, so what I'll do now is turn my other cube back on. Okay, and then we'll do a BA Boolean delete. So we'll go over to modeling, tools. We'll grab the cube we want to delete from our original cube, and then our original cube, and then we'll do a model Boolean, and we'll do a BA difference. Alright, so let's see. It looks like that's pretty good, but I think I might want to bring that out just a hair. So escape, let's grab this rectangle, bring it out just a hair, and then do a Boolean again. Let's maybe bring it out just a little bit more. And I think we're good with that. Yeah. That's solid. Okay, so I'm going to escape. So before I do that Boolean, what I want to do is control duplicate these and then move one up. And then we're going to go ahead and do the Boolean now and accept. Alright, so we got that base level of our building. Now, I wanted to do this because now if I go back into my snapping helper 3D mode, it's going to disable modeling mode here. Basically default back to selection mode. And let's enable 3D helper. And now we're going to move this block right into the face of this building. Now as you can see, like it's not aligned like it needs to be, but we'll deal with that a little bit later. Okay, so let's kind of bring that in on both sides. Yeah, and it looks like the whole thing needs to shift a bit. So we're going to bring this into the corner about right there and here. And then we're going to grab these other rectangles and do a quick rotation, turn off the angle snapping, and then just kind of get this aligned a little more accurately. And let's see what happens if we now move it. Looks like we turned it a little bit too far. Still a little bit too far. Okay, so rotate. Okay, let's do one more rotation, see if we can get it right this time. It's not going to be perfect, but I think we can get it close enough to kind of be satisfied with our angles. Alright, let's check the bottom part of this building out. That's where it needs to be, because I'm kind of moving all these pieces at the same time. And I think this is good enough for me. Now I can grab this and intersect it with the building a little more. And we can kind of look at the top here to determine how close that needs to be. And then we'll modify this to get it right there in the building, kind of intersecting. And now we can scale it. Okay. And I would say that that's pretty good right there. All right, and then before we do a Boolean, let's go ahead and move this down. Okay, and then I'm going to do a height adjustment. And I want to see if I can maybe get just one of these windows. Okay, so as we can see right here, that is very detailed. Very detailed. And all those windows are a bit separated. So let's zoom out. Okay, well, inspect, and I know that I have this popped out, I think, somewhere. The inspector. Let's pop this out. How do we pull the inspector out? Undock. There it is. And let's hide this one more time. Let's see. Okay, let's minimize that. Alright, so what I want to do is just try to get this rectangle at a decent height. And I'm thinking maybe just directly in the middle would be useful. And this will kind of help us determine the height between these windows. The alternative thing to do would be to just get the height of the windows, which I think would also help. So let's move this up to the height of the window. All right, and that will give us everything we need to basically know how high the windows are. All right, that's all the information we need for what we're trying to accomplish with SketchUp. Okay, and then we'll Boolean that in just a minute. But I want to pull this all the way up to the top, right, just so we can now get, let's go ahead and duplicate the Boolean. And we're gonna give it 2. We're gonna duplicate this with Alt and drag. Okay, and in SketchUp we can then do let's go ahead and Control D and move these up. And I'll go ahead and do a Boolean for this. So select modeling, model Boolean should already be set, and accept. And then I'll go back and just do a duplicate, drag here. And in SketchUp we'll align it more appropriately later. But I want one more here at the top on this last window, which we will Boolean out of in just a second. So we want the last window and we want to make sure it's at the correct or in the appropriate height. And that looks about right. Let's bring it up just a hair. All right, and that's about it right there. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, so this gives us the separation of these two windows down here to kind of showcase what like how far apart those windows should be. And then this one gives us the last window at the top so that maybe we can, in SketchUp, do a duplicate and some division. Like, you know, I'll show you what I mean shortly. For this rectangle, I want to go ahead and duplicate this up. Right, and then we are going to let's go back to our 3D helper. Select this bottom corner. Okay, too many elements in here. So maybe I just need to turn this off temporarily. Like, why? What is up with all these? Like, I can't grab what I need to grab. Because I got too many items in here, I guess. Yeah, I can't place my little cursor for some reason. That's really weird. 3D, oh, it's not turned on anymore. Is that why it wasn't working? There we go. That's all I was trying to do. There we go. All right, now I should be able to move this over. I want to get it just about where it needs to be up against this wall. Let's move it down right at the base of this rooftop. Okay, stretch it up. And then move it over just a bit. All right, and that should give us our first Boolean for the whole building. Okay, we're going to duplicate this up. Okay, move it over like so. Get it to the appropriate height. Okay, and that gives us our next Boolean. Perfect. Let's move it over just a hair. And then we need one more. So duplicate it up. I like to go kind of underneath it so I can see where it intersects with the building. And just get it aligned appropriately there. All right, that's cool. That basically gives us the Booleans that we need from that end. Let's turn this one off for a second and take a look at the location of this one. Okay, turn that one off and take a look at the location for this one. Just to see how it hits that edge. want to be as accurate as I can possibly be. Okay, there's our Booleans for that, and now I can turn those other Booleans back on. We're going to take this one and duplicate it and cut it out of this window piece. So modeling Boolean except undo. I thought we duplicated this, but I guess we didn't. Let's do that again. Boolean except. Alright, so I duplicated this rectangle, Control D, and you have to like click inside of your window when you want to use those commands on your keyboard, or else they won't work. If you're clicking around in your outliner and then you come back to this window and press Control D without actually clicking to activate your 3D space, then those hotkeys won't work. They don't work the same in the outliner as they do in like in your window. Okay, so now we have this window up here. This was just a duplicate so we can maintain our original pieces. Okay, so this is a window that I can now duplicate. So let's go back to our 3D helper and let's duplicate and drag this down and then scale it all the way up. And let's go into the roof a little bit and make sure we scale it up to, I'm going to say to about here. We want to hit it to the floor. And then I'm going to, let's see, can we grab at the top? And let's Control D to duplicate. And what we'll do is now we'll kind of invert stretch this upwards so that we can not only have our floor but our like rooftop, so we can also have kind of that rooftop edge, right? And I want to bring it up to this little corner right here. Right, because if you look inside of there, you see that the rooftop ends right there, but the edge of the building ends about right there. Okay, so I want to have this additional piece that we can use as a reference inside of SketchUp. Okay, and the very last thing I'll do, or not last, but I'll grab this rectangle and let's duplicate it with Alt Drag. And I should now be able to use Control Alt and click on this edge right here. Control Alt, boom. So that moves it over and snaps it into place. Okay, and that's pretty much exactly where it needs to be, I think, because I believe that these pieces were the same width. So now I want to stretch this inward. Destrude it, I guess, would be a word. So I'm going to set the extrusion to fit this portion of the top of this building. Let's turn this one off for a second. Let's grab this. Say it's about right there. And then we'll bring it down. Let's say to, honestly, I don't know how I'm going to handle this, but we're just going to guesstimate. And we'll build from this later. So maybe to like the top of where this detail starts to kind of curve a little bit. So let's go back to our folder and then open up our rooftop references. And let's see which one we want to use as a reference. So a lot of this is probably going to be more necessary in SketchUp. Okay, open with photo. Browse all your photos and videos. That's not what I want to do. Open in File Explorer. Oh, okay, also not what I'm trying to do. All right, so I guess I need to just close this one and then do a Control Alt T. Windows, Control Windows T, right? Okay, and now we have a new reference. So I want to bring this maybe up to the top of this little corner right here. So that's what we'll do, to the top of that little corner, wherever we think that is, and I think it's about right there. I'm gonna move this over to this top corner, this little pivot, using our 3D, our snapping helper 3D. We're gonna Control D to duplicate, and then we're gonna inverse, pull this up, and this will give us the tip of that. And maybe actually instead of using the tip, man, this is just like way the proportions of this are okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we can do the tip of that so that we can get the height of that tip correct inside of Sketch. I want to duplicate this again right where it is, but then pull this one up to maybe the tip of this, and then Control D to duplicate again, and we're going to keep those three overlapping and pull it up to the very, very tip there. All right, and that gives me like enough information to kind of use, I think. I'll go ahead and duplicate it again though, and I'll set this to be the pivot to be centered, and then we're going to bring it in and down, and try to get an accurate representation of how wide this block is coming out to this window right here. So if you zoom in here, I want to try to get it like from this corner to this corner in width. And I think that's pretty good for me. And the last thing, I keep saying last thing, but let me go and add a shape and a sphere. Actually, that's unnecessary. What I can do instead is just duplicate this up, pull it out, grab the center of this, and just kind of modify this to be a rectangle close to the size of what I think this circle is going to be. Let's move this down and do a scale. And then we're going to try to just get this right in the center of that circle. And then just stretch it to the size of what we think our circle is. But this is going to be a rectangle, right? So when we create a circle inside of SketchUp, we'll know exactly what the radius or the diameter is based on this square, right? Based on that rectangle. All right, and that'll be our just a little reference guide. Okay. So I got a lot of pieces that I'm just bashing together in here to use as references, and guess what I need? Let me turn this off and grab this one and see what we can do with this. Basically, actually, you know what? Let's turn that on. Let's keep that on. Let's turn this off and turn this off. And let's see if we can find let's keep that on. Okay, that's a Boolean that we used. All right, so now what I can do is do some Booleans for the main portion of this building. All right, so modeling, model, Boolean, except. We're going to do the same thing again. Uh-oh. Let's undo that Boolean. And let's just make sure that we have it as wide as we need it to be for the Boolean to work properly. Okay, that should work correctly. And what I can do actually is join these three rectangles together using modeling tools, mesh union, except, and then I can do a Boolean under model Boolean, except. All right, cool. But I need to go and undo that real quick and duplicate this Boolean. Let's do a Boolean on the building again, and then do a Boolean also on that little rooftop piece. Perfect. Now I'll grab this rectangle up here, go back to our 3D snapping helper. And let's just move it with the duplicate option, holding down Alt. Okay, and what we're going to do now is let's select the top corner, pull her down. Let's try this corner actually. And let's see if we can attach it to this corner. There we go. Remember, that is Control Alt and click. All right, so that being done, I should now be able to extend this out to where these windows are. About there. And then move it down to about there. And then bring it in about to here. See if we can select the corner. Okay, and now let's scale it inward to about there. Actually, we'll say to about there. Okay. And what we can do now is Control duplicate, move it up, grab it from the bottom, and snap these two pieces together. I'm going to enable 45-degree angle rotation. Then we're going to rotate that in, and we're going to just assume that that's where the rotation needs to be. Then we'll just bring this in a little bit. And there we go. We're going to do the same thing with this piece now. Is we're going to duplicate it. I'm going to just Alt drag, and let's try to get it right on the corner from here to here, Control Alt click, and we'll do a 45-degree rotation, and I'm going to bring it in to about there. Alright, and this will make sense in SketchUp once we get there. Okay, it doesn't need to be as tall as it is either. Okay, so let's do now I want to basically duplicate this and have the exact same thing. Let's see how we can accomplish this. Technically, I think this is something that we can kind of wrap up in SketchUp. We don't need to do that 3 times. We just need one reference. And there is our Raymond James building, gray blocked. Right, so if I go to my content browser, if I go to all, and then I search for default, and then I enable the materials texture filter, I should be able to find my default grid, hair default, or I can just search grid, world grid material. So all of my cubes and booleans, we're going to apply the world default material to them. All right, and that is gray blocking. That is called gray blocking. All right, so let's go to lit. And basically now we have our gray blocked building somewhat designed, right? And that's a start. That's how I gray block my buildings. And then I will take all of those assets. Okay, so in my outliner, I'll grab all my booleans and cubes. Okay, and make sure that they're all selected. And I can go to File, Export Selected, and we'll go into Memphis, Sketchup, let's see, Raymond James Building, Models, and we will just create a new folder, exports, so UE export, and then we'll create another folder, SketchUp SU exports. Excuse me. And then new folder SU models. Okay, so UE exports, we're going to open that up and we're going to call this Raymond James. And I think this needs to be a stereolithography, STL file. So I can minimize these 2 windows. Let's go ahead and save. All right. And let's go back into unlit mode. We're going to open up SketchUp Pro. I'm using the 2023 model or version because I have plugins enabled for that version specifically. I'm going to open my downtown Memphis project. So in Unreal Engine, my origin, like my 0, point origin, is right here. Right, so when you bring something into the world like a volume, or let me see, game mode, what is this called, like a light, when you add like a skylight or something, and it defaults to the location in your details panel as 000. All right, location 000 on the X, Y, and Z axis of your world grid, which is right here for me. Sketch or Unreal Engine exports any file inside of the level using this 000 origin, right? So if I go into my SketchUp model, you'll see that I have my the Memphis pyramid that I designed in here. I'm still working on it, but it's in here, and my origin is all the way over here, right? So this is where my little person is, and I think Unreal Engine exports assets at 1/10 the scale of real life. Like when you have something inside of your Unreal Engine project, if you export an STL file, it is going to be 1/10 the size of what it is in your project. So when you bring it into SketchUp, you need to 10x the size of it from the origin of 0, right? From that origin point. All right, so as you can see, we have the bridge and the pyramid. So if I go back to Unreal Engine, from my origin point, if I come all the way up, you'll see that I have the bridge here. Let's go back to lit, and let's turn on the pyramid. So Bass Pro. Okay, so as you can see, there's the pyramid and the bridge, and then it kind of correlates here as well, though I'm using different camera settings, so it might look much closer. It might look much closer from here. All right, so but I believe the camera settings are different, so it looks like they're in a different position basically. What I should be able to do now is go to File, Import, and then I'll go to 3D Projects, Memphis, SketchUp, Raymond James, Models, Unreal Engine Exports, Raymond James STL. And then what I want to do is take that and I need to zoom into this girl right here. And then I need to draw a line right here at the origin upwards, and maybe I'll draw a line out on the red axis and then one out on the green axis, and then I'm going to grab all three of those and click on my imported asset here, and then we're going to do a Control G. All right, and then I will do a scale. So let's make sure that this is I see. I think how do we want to handle this? I want to scale from this dot. So scale. I guess it doesn't, it's not seriously important, but if I could, how am I going to do this? Because I realize some of my assets are kind of underneath my 0 point, and I want to be able to scale from here. Okay. Well, let's not think too much into it. And I'm going to go ahead and just grab and scale outwards and do a 10. Okay. And basically what should happen is now this should be 10 times the size of what it was when I exported it from Unreal Engine. Now I can ungroup, Control Shift G for me, which is what I use. And now my Raymond James building, let's delete that. And honestly, let me just undo everything I just did. All right, you see how little it is when I undo that? I'm gonna go in here and delete. I didn't realize I grabbed this rectangle, and I think that's what's throwing this off a little bit. Okay. Escape. Escape. That's better. Now I think as it's much closer to the origin, which is ultimately what I want. I want it to be at the origin, so that when I import it when I import it, it's going to be sitting right where it's supposed to be with the need for very minor adjustments. Okay, so now let's do a scale again. From here, we'll go 10. Okay, and I'll do that again so you can see what I just did. So scale from this top corner back this way times 10. Okay. Now escape. I'm going to ungroup this or explode it. And, we got some assets in here. That's Control R, Control Group, and double click into it, Control Shift A. And these are shortcuts that I added, and this helps me change the origin rotation. Right? And then I'm going to hide that. So everything unrelated to Raymond James building, I can put under a new tag. So let's close materials, close styles. Let's go to tags and create a new folder called buildings. And then a tag in that folder called pyramid. A tag in that folder called HD bridge, even though it's not a building. And then a tag in that folder called Raymond James. All right, HD is Hernando de Soto Bridge. So I can select all of this, group it, and tag it under pyramid and turn that off. Then I'll grab this, tag it under HD bridge, turn that off. Then I'll grab this group and tag it under Raymond James. Okay. So, to make our editing that much easier. Now, one of the tough parts about this is that I believe a lot of my assets are now just combined together, unfortunately. And what I probably would need to do, I want to see if I can export this as an object file or a different type. So let's go to Unreal Engine. Let's close all of our static meshes. And I think everything that's turned off, we probably don't need to export. So all of these plus these, and export selected. Just want to see what my different options are going to be. We're going to do we can do an FBX. And then see FBX 2020. We don't need any vertex colors or any of this stuff. Level of detail, source mesh, morph targets, blah blah blah. And let's just see if we can use FBX real quick. Okay, file, import. I don't know if we can import an FBX. We've got 3ds. Do we have OBJ? Can we export an OBJ from UE? File, export selected. And we'll go OBJ for LOD. No, just OBJ. And then we'll save this as Raymond James OBJ. No materials. And then we'll go file, import Raymond James OBJ. And let's see what the difference is with the OBJ. Let's go back and turn on pyramid and HD bridge. Interestingly enough, I want to say that this is exported at 20 times the size. So let's grab this. Let's group it and then do a scale. Let's see, point one. Let's see, 0.1. Is it 0.5? What is this? 0.4? Let's go 0.5 and see where that sits at. I don't think the Raymond James is that close to the bridge or the pyramid. So STL files import a little differently. But it's possible that this is the correct way to do this. To where all of the, so don't do an STL import because you're going to get a shit model. Do an OBJ export and scale down to 0.5, right? So that being said, I think what I can do now is, let's say I take this and do a copy, and then we're going to put this under Raymond James. Turn Raymond James off, turn the pyramid off and the bridge off. Control Shift paste to paste in place. Wait, but that didn't work. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, I don't know what happened, but let's go back, grab this, copy, escape, escape, put this under Raymond James. Okay, turn Raymond James off, Control Shift paste, group, file. Actually, I want to go in here and make a quick modification to this. And let's say we're just gonna pull this up a bunch. All right, just so we can differentiate this from the original. If I go to File, Export, 3D Model, actually cancel. Let's do a Export Datasmith file, Sketchup, Raymond James Building, Models, Sketchup Exports, and then we're going to save this as RJ1 underscore test. Save. Okay. Now if I go back here, what I'm going to want to do is turn off all of what I just created. We're going to go into our outliner, create a new folder under static meshes, buildings, and Raymond James. Okay, and then we'll go to, basically we're going to want to bring this into our generated folder for a new folder called Raymond James. Inside of this folder is where we're going to do our datasmith import. Okay, so let's go to datasmith file import, and Sketchup, Raymond James, Models, Sketchup exports, and RJ1 test datasmith. It's going to ask us where we want to put that. We'll put that in generated Raymond James. Okay. And then it's going to ask us what we want to import. We just want to import geometry. And really I can just click import. I'm going to give that a second to import. And I hope that doesn't import everything that's inside of that SketchUp model. Okay, it doesn't. Perfect. It imported Heather, but I didn't want it to import Heather. So this tells me that yes, this was too big, and the original placement of the other file was probably the right place, because here's the Raymond James building, and here is our imported model. All right, but it is to the correct scale. There we go. Alright, so that being said, we can tell that this is much bigger than what it's supposed to be. I think it is, but let's just kind of do some overlays and test. Let's bring this to unlit. Yeah. So I just wanted to see how this would come in. Okay. So now that's the next thing, is we just got to figure out what our methodology is for importing and exporting assets. Okay, so I thought something was wrong there. Now, let's go back and redo this. Let's turn on Raymond James. Let's go in here, delete everything. Let's explode this. I'm actually going to delete our woman. Let's turn on the bridge and the pyramid. And what we'll do real quick is go File, Import, and we're going to go back to Unreal Engine, and we're going to import that STL. going to draw a rectangle from our 0 point in our origin, and then we're going to push that downward, and I'm going to group it. And this should help me kind of cut this where it needs to be cut temporarily. Let's see. So I'll take this asset, we're just going to draw a line out here. Okay. Clean that model up. I use the clean tool, which is something you can download at the Sketchup extensions warehouse, to clean all those extra lines off of these rectangles. And now I'm just going to I'm going to push pull this up to the floor. Actually, no. I need to draw a line down to here so I can get how far underneath my so I can figure out how far underneath my 0 point this building, this floor, sinks into the ground. Let's do a push pull, push this up to the floor, and then let's move this up to that height as well, and that'll tell me how much lower my building needs to go. Now, all that being done, I should be able to scale this correctly from 0. Let's draw a line down to my origin. Okay. Let's group this, and that's more like it. And now I should be able to scale this out times 10. Okay. We'll grab this and scale it back down to 0. So 0.1, or scale it back to its original size, and then we'll ungroup this. Now I can go back in here and then push this floor back down. Actually, let me just grab the floor, move it from this top point down, and that gives the height it's supposed to be. I can get rid of this now. Alright, so the STL file and multiplied by 10 sits that building exactly where it's supposed to be. Okay. So now I can turn off the bridge and the pyramid. Let's go back and create our Raymond James folder, or tag. Let's save this, and let's see how we can import, file import, our object, or our OBJ. Okay. And what I've now got to figure out is how to get this to the appropriate scale. So what I can do first is just grab it on this bottom corner and bring it to this bottom corner here. Right? And then I'll go into it, double click it, Shift H to hide everything else that's not inside of that group, Control Shift A to change my axis to this corner. Okay, perfect. I'm going to do the same thing for this, Control Shift A, and that's a shortcut that I created to change my pivot point axis. And then, would you like to update the component axis to match your modified sketch? This will change the axis for all instances. Yes. Okay. Now, let's see here. So I now have all these assets, and I need to figure out the scale of it. So I think the scale is, let's go with scale, and what is this, 0.4? 0.39? That is so interesting. I wonder why this scale is so different. So 0.39 is not tall enough. 0.39. I wonder if I can do a none. Let's see. So what I can do, I think, is take this and copy it, and then right click and explode it. Right click, explode. Okay, and group it. And then inside of this, we'll change our axis again. That's not what we wanted. We need to group it all first. Okay, there we go. Now we go and change the axis. Okay. And let's move this one out of the way. What I'm trying to do here is just get what my scale factor needs to be for objects imported from this project. Now let's try to do a scale. Alright, so I know what I can do to solve this problem. Let's move this back out of the way. For this little model, what I'll do is draw a line. Let's go into this. Let's draw a line up from this corner to the top of this corner. Draw a line down the green axis to here. Line down the red axis. Back down the green axis. Alright, and that should give me the top of, oh, close. Forgot that part. Let's draw a line back from the red axis to this edge, then to this edge, back to there. Okay, so there we go. Now I should be able to move this into place and then scale it right up on this, and it should tell me approximately 0.39. So that's not helpful, because I wish SketchUp would give me the exact dimensions, but this is fine. This will work. Okay, so let's now grab this and delete it. Grab this and delete it. It's approximately 0.39, and that's not helpful. But I think what we can learn from this is, once we have, let's turn the pyramid back on, let's turn the bridge back on. This is exactly where it needs to be now. Okay, that was a lot of roundabout way of just importing a model, but the STL file, here's how you do this. Export an STL file from Unreal Engine, import the STL into SketchUp, and that is going to be and then scale that up by 10. That is going to be exactly where your model needs to be. Like, it's going to import exactly where the model needs to be at the scale it needs to be. Export the OBJ file from Unreal Engine, import it into SketchUp, and then figure out how to move those assets into place using the STL file location as a reference. And with the base of the floor for my project being underneath the grid, I had to extrude the floor back up to 0, and I used a line to give like a line to give me the measurement of how much I needed to extrude the floor back down underneath the axis, so that once I scaled the model into place using these little lines I created at the 0, um, at the axis point, I could then extrude the floor back down where it is based on the imported assets. And now this, if I were to go in here, let's take this and let's zoom into this. Oh, I think I fucked something up again. I did. Okay, so I fucked something up. I need to go back and redo that again. I just realized, okay, so the whole point of what I just did was to try to figure out what the scale factor needed to be. That makes sense. So I need to go back and file import the OBJ file again. Okay, and we're gonna just move it. So it's approximately 39, and that's not super helpful because we don't need approximate scaling. We need exact scaling. Um, and the only way that I think I can do that is I need to go into all of these assets and adjust their axis points. Okay, so let's put this under Raymond James and turn it off so that every time I modify something, I can hide it. Basically, I'm modifying the axes of all of these individual rectangles. And then I'm putting them in the Raymond James group, which is hidden, so that they can basically kind of go away for a second. Alright, put that under Raymond James. See, and as you can see, this bounding box is not aligned because the axis is basically the world origin axis. And I want to go inside of the group to change the axis of the individual item. Turn Raymond James back on. Alright, there's something in here. Oh, so now I could do an axis change here. Alright, and that gives me basically the same axes as this STL file. Now all of this I can group it and then draw our lines again in here. Okay, it's up to the rooftop basically. All right, one on green to here, one on red to there. Okay, one back to here and close that out. And now I should be able to move my OBJ import, seeing that the bounding box is now encompassing the edges of all these rectangles I had created earlier. We can now move this from this corner to here and then do an appropriate scale down to this plane that we created. All right, and then we can delete the STL import, and now we have our OBJ version imported and scaled properly. When we double click into it, we now have all individual bounding blocks for those assets we created in Unreal Engine. So for example, I can now go in here, Control A, copy, and close out this group and hide Raymond James, and then do a Control Shift paste, and then let's do a Control Shift C to clean that model up. Basically, I'm using the tools, or is it extensions, cleanup 3, and I have clean with last settings set to Control Shift C. All right, clean those faces up, and now I'll just do a quick extrude of my asset up here. And you know, let's just say for shits and giggles, we're going to draw a line. First, let me go in here and group this, and then go into the group, Control Shift A to adjust the pivot. And now, if I go in there and draw that line, my axes will be appropriately lined to the faces on my building. All right, extrude this out a little bit. All right, let's just say for shits and giggles, we're going to extrude that out, make it an L. So if I take this now and go File, or if I go to Datasmith Export, we're going to overwrite our Raymond James building export. So Sketchup exports, Raymond James 1 test, save, yes, we want to overwrite that. Inside of my content browser for Unreal Engine, I'm going to delete these geometries. Actually, I'm going to go to Raymond James and delete the whole RJ1 test folder. Let's first make sure that we deleted it out of the window, out of the project. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So delete, force delete. Okay, now let's go back, Datasmith, file import, RJ1 test. It's going to ask me where. We're going to put it in Raymond James. Okay, it's going to ask me what to import, which is going to choose geometry, import. And it might import some lines because I didn't delete those lines at the origin when I did the export. But I give it a second. Now if I go zoom in, the building is now where it's supposed to be. Excuse me. Right, that's right, that's correct. Right, it doesn't go all the way to the bottom because I only exported a portion of my blocks that I brought from Unreal Engine into SketchUp. I cherry picked the one Boolean that I brought from Unreal Engine into SketchUp, right? And then I just created this little L shape just to prove that this is now going to be imported into the appropriate place. All right, so there's the methodology for just making sure we have our SketchUp model optimized to where the building is now placed. So, you know, let's say delete this and then turn on Raymond James. Or I can just do a quick undo. Okay, so let's turn on Raymond James. And as you can see now, all of those blocks are now in the appropriate place. This is the one that we just brought out to export to showcase. You see it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. Exactly, that it will import now in the appropriate spot. There's a Raymond James building using Unreal Engine blocks, right? If I click on this and Control Shift C, that's going to clean that up for me. And then I'll hit Control Save, and now I have the Raymond James building exactly where it's supposed to be in comparison to where the Memphis Bridge and the Bass Pro Shops building is. Boom. Now I can go into SketchUp and use all of SketchUp's modeling tools to block out my windows, and I'll put all of that in another video. But this was just really just to get you started and get your block out, your gray blocking done, so that now you have, like, SketchUp is my tool of choice for architectural rendering and modeling. So now I can use this as my reference of base pieces to go in here and start blocking out windows and designing the Raymond James building. And once I'm done building all the different groups of materials and things that I need for this Raymond James building, the glass, the doors, etc., I can then group it all together, go to File, Export, and then bring all those assets into the engine, so group 1, group 17. What's group 17? F. Okay, group 17 is difference 54 Bass Pro. Let's turn off Bass Pro. And let's see. I want to say that this is anything that's in this SketchUp file when I go to export is now going to be imported into Unreal Engine, which is what we don't want. So the last thing, we're going to force delete all of this content in the geometries folder. And then we're going to force delete all of the assets from RJ1 test. Let's see, buildings, Bass Pro. We're going to turn off Bass Pro. And then let me figure out where these are coming from. So group 17, group 20, group 11, we can delete those. Okay, yeah, groups, all those groups we can delete. So, groups, Heather. Yeah, I accidentally imported a bunch of stuff that I didn't need to import. What is intersection 2? And that's something to think about as well. So we got our Booleans and we got our cubes, and these are all for the building. Let me turn those on. And I think I can go ahead and delete these now because they will no longer be needed. And all these Booleans, let me turn them on and delete those. Go back and turn on Bass Pro. Okay, good. So we got Bass Pro still in there. Turn it off. All right, now, so we've basically figured it out. Once we block out that one building and we download the references and kind of get everything where we need them to be, let's go ahead and save this once we deleted all those assets. The appropriate way to import from here would be to open up a new SketchUp document, right click and copy, or just do a Control C to copy your my Raymond James building into that new document at its same origin, right? Because what's going to happen is when you do a DataSmith export from this project, it's going to export our reference lines right here. It's going to export all of this. It's going to export all of this, and we don't want all those individual layers to be exported. Okay, so we take this, we do a Control C, copy, open a new SketchUp document, Control V, paste in place, do an export for DataSmith, and once that is exported, we can go back into Unreal Engine and only import our Raymond James building without having to worry about anything else from this project being accidentally imported into the engine twice. That's it. So, now if you guys want to join me in some of my next videos, I can show you the process of actually doing the modeling for this Raymond James building. And maybe that'll give you guys some insight into how I go through the process of modeling the building. So, for example, here is the model that I created for the Bash Pro Shops pyramid. And it's basically using the same technique. Once I went in there, I decided, I want to have a glass material here. All right, so let's say I delete this. There's our glass material. We've got our beams. Let's delete the beams. We've got these other horizontal beams. Okay, and a whole bunch of other assets in here that we can utilize. Okay, we've got a floor, another floor. And then there's really just the bulk of the pyramid. Like all these individual assets have been individually modeled, right? So that I can get that higher fidelity detail instead of using like PBR textures to fake the physical attributes of the pyramid. I went and modeled all those attributes. Okay. Once I did that, I did an export of the pyramid, right? And from another SketchUp file, open an empty SketchUp document, imported the assets that I wanted to import into the engine, and then I did a DataSmith export, and then I ended up with, let me turn it back on, pyramid and lit. There we go. I ended up with this. Let me turn off that 3D. Right? So whole pyramid is now in there, and I've got some things that I want to add to kind of bash together some details, and I've also got to do the bottom, but we've got pyramid now. If I take these lights and increase the emission of these lights, let's pin this. Actually, there's no pinning needed. I just need to I can hit escape. There we go. And I can adjust the emission of, whoops, my light material. And there you have it. Bass Pro Shops. Alright, so if I do go into my lighting and directional lighting and adjust, let's say the rotation, you can still see some pretty good lighting there. A lot of settings that I do want to adjust, but as you can see, like if I zoom in here, there are a lot of details that kind of automatically happen because I did the detailed modeling inside of SketchUp to get that fidelity. And when I go and do some renderings, you'll be able to see those details, in the final rendering. All right. And there you have it. See you guys in the next video. Peace.